You won't believe how the narcissist made you hypersexual. You won't believe how the narcissist made you hypersexual. There's a pain we don't talk about, a confusion that festers in the dark. You look in the mirror and wonder, why do I feel addicted to connection, but terrified of love? Why does my body seek closeness, but my soul feels empty afterward? This isn't you. This is what happens when a narcissist programs your nervous system for survival, not intimacy. Let's crack the code. Let's rip the blindfold off. They taught you that love equals performance from the very start. The narcissist didn't see you as a person. They saw you as a tool for admiration, a tool for validation, a tool for their own twisted entertainment. They needed to feel like the sun, and they made you orbit around them like a planet, just grateful to receive a little light. They taught you that if you weren't pleasing, you weren't worthy. If you weren't dazzling, you weren't lovable. That's not love, that's programming. They conditioned you to perform. Every smile, every touch, every gesture of affection, measured, monitored, manipulated. If you did what they wanted, they showered you with attention, gifts, praise. But when you didn't, they withdrew. They punished. They iced you out with silence colder than winter. And so, your nervous system did what all of us do in trauma. It adapted. It said, okay, to survive, I must become what they want. So you leaned into sexuality. You turned yourself into an object, not because you wanted to, but because they rewarded you when you did. You learned to turn yourself on, not because of your desire, but because it was the only way to be seen. You weren't expressing your sexuality. You were negotiating for scraps of affection. You weren't empowered. You were entrapped in a performance that left your soul exhausted and your spirit shattered. Let's get real. This wasn't about lust. This wasn't about pleasure. This was about approval, and for someone wounded, hungry for love, desperate to be enough. Approval can feel like oxygen. You weren't chasing sex. You were chasing belonging. And when it worked, when they gave you that praise, even for a moment, your brain lit up. You felt alive. You felt special. You felt wanted. And that high, it kept you dancing on command, but it was never consistent. It was never safe, because the narcissist moves the goalposts. One day they love your body, the next day they criticize it. One moment they crave you, the next they ignore you, so you perform harder, you push further, you cross boundaries you never imagined crossing. Not out of desire, but out of fear, fear of being discarded, fear of being invisible, fear of being unloved, and they knew it. They saw your hunger, they watched the way you tried to earn them, and instead of softening to your vulnerability, they exploited it. They sexualized your presence, then blamed you for being too much. They turned you into the very thing they resented, and then punished you for it. That's not intimacy, that's psychological warfare. Every time you reached for them, they pulled away just enough to keep you chasing. They dangled affection like bait, making your body feel like a weapon and your worth feel like a performance. Your mind said, if I just try harder, maybe they'll stay. Your soul said, this isn't love, it's imprisonment. But you didn't know how to stop, because your body was wired to believe that performance equals survival. This is how they trained you to seek validation through sensuality, to confuse lust with love, to equate attention with acceptance. And every time you conformed to their fantasies, you lost another piece of your authentic self. You became a reflection of their desires, not a revelation of your own. Your identity was melting under the heat of their manipulation. They didn't just steal your innocence. They hijacked your blueprint for love. They made you believe that your sexuality was your only currency, that your body was your only offering. And every time they discarded you after intimacy, a deeper lie was burned into your mind. I am only valuable when I am useful. But let me tell you right now, that is not your truth. That is their toxin. Your body is sacred. Your soul is powerful. And your value has never been tied to your performance. You were tricked into believing that seduction is power. But true power isn't in what you give, it's in what you choose not to give away. It's in reclaiming your choice, your voice, your space. That's real intimacy. That's real freedom. The narcissist didn't love you. They consumed you. And when they were done feeding off your energy, they tossed you aside and told you it was your fault. But that's a lie. The truth is, you were always enough. You were just too bright for their blindness, too deep for their shallowness, too whole for their hollow, and now you see the truth. You were conditioned, not cursed. You were manipulated, not flawed. What they labeled oversexual was actually your body screaming for connection. In a world that withheld it, it wasn't a flaw. It was a survival response. And now you're waking up. Now you're unplugging from the performance. You don't need to be desired to be valuable. You don't need to perform to be loved. Love is not something you earn. It's something you allow, and now you're allowing yourself to come home to the truth that you were never too much. You were too real, and real love, it doesn't need a performance. It just needs presence. This is your moment. This is your awakening, not to repress your sensuality, but to redefine it, to reclaim it, to honor it. Your body is not a transaction. It's a temple, and anyone who treats it otherwise doesn't deserve the key to your door. Let's tear down the mask. Let's burn the script, and let's write a new truth, one rooted in wholeness, not performance. They hijacked your body as a battlefield for control. You didn't sign up for a war, but they turned your body into one. The narcissist made your skin, your pleasure, your energy into a battleground. They didn't want connection. They wanted control, and the fastest way to gain control over someone's soul is to dominate their body. If they can own your body, they can manipulate your mind, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't approach intimacy with love. They approached it like a weapon, a power move, a test, and every interaction came with invisible strings. Strings that were yanked when you got too emotional, too needy, or too independent. One moment they were all over you, intense, passionate, magnetic. The next moment they vanished like a ghost. That's not romance. That's psychological conditioning. They trained you to associate your worth with their desire. If they wanted you, you felt powerful. If they ignored you, you felt worthless. That's how they made you addicted, not to sex, but to their validation. And every time you gave them access to your body, you were really saying, please stay, please see me, please love me. But the narcissist wasn't looking for love. They were feeding on domination. Let's be clear, they used your body like a remote control. Every time you expressed your own needs, they'd either reward you with affection or punish you with distance. And in that game, sex became a bargaining chip. You were taught to offer pleasure in exchange for peace. That's not intimacy. That's negotiation under emotional blackmail. You began to anticipate their needs before your own. You dressed for them. You moved for them. You silenced your discomfort to keep them satisfied. Your boundaries didn't matter, only their mood did, and if they were happy, you were safe. So your nervous system adapted again, associating hypersexuality with survival. You weren't liberated. You were traumatized. They confused control with closeness. But real closeness invites, not invades. It listens, not dictates. The narcissist didn't want to meet you. They wanted to dominate you, and in doing so, they rewired your sense of agency. You forgot what it meant to say no. You forgot what it meant to wait until you were ready. They made your body a tool in their game of ego, and yet, here's the twist. They blamed you for the game they created. You're too sexual. You're too intense. You're too much. They pathologized the very behaviors they provoked. That's what gaslighting does. It creates the fire, then blames you for being burned. And every time they shamed you, you internalized it. You questioned yourself. You thought you were the problem. But let's be clear. They lit the fuse. They manipulated your deepest longing. Your longing to be accepted as you are. They turned that longing into a hook. And once they knew what you craved, they rationed it. They gave you a little attention, then pulled back. They touched you, then ghosted you. They made you hyper, alert to their every mood. That's not love. It's psychological warfare disguised as intimacy. The real betrayal wasn't just what they did to your body. It was what they trained your mind to believe about your body, that you were only valuable when you gave, that you were only lovable when you were pleasing, that your no didn't matter, that your yes wasn't really yours. And that's the wound we must heal, because your body belongs to you, your pleasure is sacred, your boundaries are divine, and anyone who treats your body like a tool for manipulation is revealing their own brokenness, not yours. You're not hypersexual, you're traumatized, you're not too much, you've been used too much. And now you reclaim what's always been yours. Reclaim the right to choose, the right to pause. Right to feel safe inside your skin again, the right to love without fear, because your body is not a battlefield. It's a sanctuary, and when you start seeing it that way, everything changes. You stop chasing validation and start demanding respect. You are not here to be conquered. You are here to be cherished. You're not a body to be consumed. You're a soul to be honored. And the moment you stop allowing others to dictate your worth through control, you start stepping into the most powerful form of liberation there is, ownership of self. So if you felt broken, it's not because you are, it's because someone broke the sacred contract of your boundaries, and now you get to rebuild, not as a performance, not for anyone else, but for you. You get to rewrite the script. You get to say, my body is mine. My love is not a currency. My desire is not shameful. My boundaries are holy. This is the reckoning. This is the uprising of your truth. The narcissist made your body a battlefield. But you are rising as the warrior. You are reclaiming your space, reclaiming your pleasure, reclaiming your truth, and that power, that's what they feared all along. They confused your need for love with a need for lust. Let's be real. There's nothing wrong with craving connection. That ache inside you, that longing to be held, seen, chosen. It's not weakness. It's the human condition. But a narcissist doesn't honor that need. They exploit it. And here's the kicker. They blur the lines between love and lust until even you can't tell the difference. That confusion, that distortion, that's exactly how they keep control. They saw that spark in your eyes, that need to be loved not just with words, but with presence, with hands that don't just touch, but hold, with intimacy that doesn't just arouse, but anchors. And instead of honoring that, they offered you the counterfeit version. They dressed up lust as love, intensity as intimacy, obsession as connection, and in your hunger for something real, you accepted the counterfeit. They flooded you with attention early on, texting constantly, making grand gestures, whispering fantasies. They created a whirlwind. It felt exciting, magical, consuming. But what they were really doing was grooming you to associate their presence with intensity, not consistency. So when things got sexual fast, you thought it was passion, but really it was programming, because love builds, lust rushes, love listens, lust devours, love gives you time, lust gives you pressure. The narcissist doesn't know love. They know control, and the fastest way to hook someone deep is to make them confuse arousal with attachment. That's how they hack your nervous system. That's how they make you crave them even when they're bad for you. They didn't want to build a bond. They wanted to build dependence. They knew if they could awaken something powerful in you, they could chain you to them, and every time you responded to that seductive chaos, they reinforced the loop. See, they whispered, this is what you need. But that wasn't love. That was trauma dressed in desire. And slowly, you started to believe the lie. You began to equate your need for tenderness with a hunger for sexual validation. You began to think your value came from how much you could turn them on. That's not empowerment. That's exploitation. They didn't empower your sensuality. They hijacked it. And once they got what they wanted, they pulled away. They left you dazed, ashamed, and questioning your own worth. Now here's the brutal truth. They wanted you needy. They wanted you chasing. They wanted you addicted to the highs and lows, because as long as you were confused, they were in control. They weren't just messing with your heart. They were rewiring your entire perception of love, and when you cried out for connection, they answered with performance. When you asked for depth, they gave you desire. This is why you felt empty after intimacy with them, not because you are broken, but because what they offered had no soul. It was mechanical, transactional, conditional, and yet, because your core need was love, your body kept returning for a connection that your soul never received. It wasn't lust you were craving. It was real, raw, honest love, but they twisted that craving into shame. They made you feel guilty for wanting closeness. They accused you of being clingy, dramatic, over-emotional, but that was projection. Because they were the ones incapable of emotional presence, they were the ones afraid of real intimacy. So instead, they sexualized everything, because that's the only way they know how to relate. On the surface, you see, a narcissist cannot tolerate true vulnerability, so they mask it with seduction. They can't sit with you in silence. stillness in surrender, because that would mean meeting you soul to soul, and to them that's terrifying. So instead, they turn every moment into a game, every touch into a test, every kiss into a contract. But now you see it. Now the veil is lifting, and you're realizing that what you needed was never just sex. It was safety. What you craved wasn't just pleasure. It was peace. What you wanted wasn't just desire. It was devotion. And now you begin the journey of reclaiming all of it, on your terms, in your timing, from a place of truth, not trauma. You get to draw the line. You get to say, no more confusion, no more shame, no more false intimacy. You get to separate lust from love. You get to redefine what closeness means for you, and you begin by honoring your need for love as something sacred, not something to apologize for. Your need for love is not a flaw. It's your greatest strength, because once you reclaim that need, once you stop shaming yourself for it, the spell breaks, the confusion ends, the power returns to you, and from that space, watch out, because you're not just healing, you're rising. You're reprogramming your body, mind, and spirit to recognize real love when it shows up, and more importantly, to be that love to yourself. So yes, they confused you. They made you hypersexual in your search for connection. But now you see the truth. You were never too much. You were just misunderstood, and the real love you've been searching for. It begins with how you treat yourself right now, in this moment, with the clarity that no narcissist could ever take from you again. They rewarded sexual compliance and punished emotional needs. Let's talk about one of the most sinister manipulations narcissists pull, the reward and punishment game, but not with whips or chains, with attention. With approval, with touch, with silence. They don't just manipulate what you do. They manipulate why you do it. And nowhere do they play this game more than with your sexuality and your emotional vulnerability. They made you feel seen when you gave them what they wanted, and invisible when you needed something in return. Think about it. When you initiated affection, you got coldness. But when you played their game, when you surrendered to their demands, when you sexualized your presence, they lit up. You weren't being loved. You were being trained. They taught you that your worth was transactional, that affection had to be earned, never freely given, that your emotions were inconvenient, but your body was valuable. They flipped your internal compass. Now you weren't asking, do they love me? You were asking, what do I need to do to keep them close? That's not love, that's psychological warfare. Every time you opened up emotionally, you were met with withdrawal, disinterest, maybe even anger. They made you question your feelings, they made you shrink. But when you gave them sex, when you played their fantasy, when you shut down your own needs to satisfy theirs, suddenly they were warm, kind, attentive. You weren't being connected with. You were being managed. They created a cycle. Compliance equals affection. Emotion equals rejection. Over time, this rewired you. It made you believe that your emotional needs were a threat. Intimacy, that to keep love alive, you had to keep yourself silent. That the only safe expression of love was physical, not emotional. But that was never your truth. That was their conditioning, and here's what stings. They made you feel like it was your choice, like you were empowered. But deep down you knew it wasn't empowerment, it was survival. You gave them what they wanted because you were terrified of the cold shoulder, of the passive aggression of being discarded. You learned to perform just to avoid punishment. You weren't being intimate. You were being inspected, judged, graded. And every time you didn't meet the invisible standard, you were reminded of your inadequacy, not with words, but with absence, with disconnection, with that haunting feeling that love had been withdrawn and replaced with silence. That was never your fault. That was manipulation disguised as relationship, and here's the heartbreak. They made you feel addicted to that small, inconsistent dose of affection because it felt like relief, like safety, like warmth. But it wasn't love. It was a hit, a fix, a momentary high that always led back to pain, and yet your brain chased it because they trained it to associate physical compliance with emotional safety. They didn't just train you to please them. They trained you to betray yourself, to silence your truth, to repress your tears. And what's even more devastating is that it worked, because you started feeling guilty for having Feelings, you started apologizing for needing depth. That's not relationship, that's captivity. But now the truth is roaring in you. You're not broken. You were conditioned. You're not overly emotional. You were starved for affection, and your emotional needs aren't burdens. They're boundaries. They're sacred invitations to real intimacy, and no one, not a narcissist, not anyone, gets to punish you for them ever again. It's time to unlearn that toxic equation, that lie that told you love is earned through performance, that connection is maintained through compliance, that your tears are too heavy. But your body is just right. That has never been the truth. That was the narcissist's playground, and it's time to burn it to the ground. Real love, real intimacy, it doesn't punish you for needing to be seen. It doesn't disappear when you speak your heart. It doesn't dangle affection like a carrot. It doesn't make you choose between being desired and being heard. Real love invites all of you to the table, not just the parts that serve someone else's agenda. And here's your power. When you reclaim your emotional needs, you reclaim your sexuality. You get to say, my body is not currency. My emotions are not weakness. My truth is not negotiable. You don't owe anyone silence. You don't owe anyone access. And you don't have to perform to be loved. You are worthy as you are. So the next time someone tries to reward your silence and punish your honesty, you'll feel it. You'll recognize it. And instead of folding, you'll rise, you'll speak, you'll walk away if you have to, because now you know. You're not here to be managed. You're here to be met fully, fiercely, unapologetically, and that's exactly who you're becoming. You won't believe how the narcissist made you hypersexual, delivered in that raw, intense, transformational style. No fluff, no filters, just truth. You've walked through fire, and now you see the smoke wasn't your fault. It was the blaze they lit to blind you from your truth. Every moment you felt out of control, every urge you couldn't explain, every time you turned to hypersexuality to feel wanted, worthy, or just alive. It wasn't because you were broken. It was because you were conditioned, trained by someone who fed on control, fed on your confusion, fed on your need for connection, then twisted it into a weapon against you. But here's what they didn't count on. You waking up, you've reclaimed your voice, you've reclaimed your body, you've pulled back the curtain on the manipulation. You now know how they used sex to silence your spirit, how they confused your identity, how they turned your deepest needs into vulnerabilities they could exploit. And still, you rose because you are not just a survivor of narcissistic abuse. You are a rebuilder of your soul. They didn't just create hypersexuality. They created an opportunity for you to confront your pain, to transform your patterns, and to rise into a version of yourself that no longer needs to perform for love. Now you choose when to connect. You choose who gets access, and that choice comes from strength, not fear. You no longer chase affection with your body because you're learning to love yourself with your soul. You no longer silence your emotions to be desirable because now you know your emotions are sacred. You no longer seek approval through intimacy because now your intimacy is intentional. And that voice inside you, the one that was silenced for so long, is screaming with truth. It says, I don't have to be used to feel loved. I don't have to be sexual to be valuable. I don't have to abandon my emotions to be accepted. I am enough exactly as I am, so let this be your final vow, not to them, but to yourself. You will no longer be molded by the madness of manipulation. You will no longer be shamed into silence. You will no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. From this day forward, your sexuality belongs to you. Your emotions belong to you. Your worth is no longer on loan to anyone who cannot handle your truth. Because you've seen the game, you've felt the damage, and now you hold the power. This isn't just a new chapter. This is your rebirth. And baby, they're not ready for a version of you that's coming. The world hasn't even met the real you yet. But it's about to.